Hello, my name is Sylvester Henderson, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Professor for Life Incorporated, and I am so happy this afternoon to interview and welcome Dr. Devin Oten. Welcome, Dr. Oten.
Thank you, Professor Henderson. It's a pleasure to be on with you tonight. Excuse me.
Very much so. Thank you. Dr. Oten, can you please introduce yourself to our digital media academic world and tell us a little bit about where did you grow up, and please share your academic journey and where did you attend college and all those wonderful things.
Absolutely. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. So I'm from the Deep South. You might pick up on some of that twang as we talk tonight. I did initially my undergrad work at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and studied physical geography. I wanted to be a meteorologist, but LSU didn't have a meteorology degree. You had to get a physical geography degree and study climatology, which I focused on in that program. Of course, that was many, many years ago. Went back to school about 8 years ago to complete a master's in law with a concentration in human resource law. And then just last year completed my Doctor of Strategic Leadership with the focus on human resource development. And that's been my academic journey. I now live in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, my wife and I, and that's my academic journey.
Wow, that's quite a difference between law as opposed to geography. That's a real big difference.
Yes.
What moved you to law, if I may ask, away from your original, maybe I would say younger desire to kind of work in the area of geography? Because that's quite a difference.
I tell you, Professor Henderson, it's been quite a journey. At that time, when I was in the undergraduate study at LSU in physical geography, I received a call to the pastorship. So I became a pastor. So that diverted me that direction. And then what happened is several years ago, I wanted to go to law school, right? I said, you know what? I want to advocate for the disenfranchised, for those who don't have a voice, have representation. So I said, you know what? I want to go to law school. But the law school I wanted to go to is in Virginia. And I wasn't ready to leave and move to Virginia. You know, my wife and I, we really love it here in California. So I decided to, said, you know what, I'll do a master's in law. And then, once I complete that, maybe I'll be ready to go and get my JD, if you will, my Juris Doctorate. And then I became interested in this degree in strategic leadership because I consider myself to be a strategic leader in my military career and in my nonprofit career, as well as in my corporate career. So I said, you know what, that looks like an interesting course of study. Plus, it allowed me to continue studying human resource development. So in law, it was human resource development, and then the focus in my doctorate degree was in human resource development as well. So I'm not sure if that explains it, but I've had, a windy road, if you will, from that initial academic journey until now.
Well, I know that you are both employed as a law and business professor for Langston University and Cornell University currently. And can you kind of describe what you do for those two institutions for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually an adjunct professor for Langston University, the only HBCU in the state of Oklahoma. And I teach in the School of Business. I teach in the master's program. And a few of the classes that I teach, of course, I teach business law for them. I also teach human resource development courses, as well as entrepreneur strategy, entrepreneur organizational type classes, as well as franchise licensing and distribution courses. Now for Cornell, I actually facilitate courses for them in their diversity, equity, and inclusion vertical. And of course, there's a number of courses that I facilitate there, such as systems thinking, such as employment law, among other courses that I facilitate for them. So, yeah, I've been doing that since started with Langston last June, and started with Cornell last August.
Wow.
So, been with them, yeah, just a little less than a year. And it's been a great experience, Professor. Great experience.
What are some of the major differences between the two institutions? Langston being a historical Black college, and Cornell really being an Ivy League university.
Yes.
There has to be some administrative differences, some organizational differences, and some focus differences. Can you kind of discuss some of those differences?
Absolutely. Most of the students that I instruct at Langston University, most of them are first generation college students. A number of them come from single parent households. So there are some challenges, if you will, in terms of their academic journey. But it's been a pleasure to work with them because they're overcomers. A number of them have aspirations to achieve. And of course, if they're in a master's program at the institution, they're really looking to push the envelope, if you will, in their academic career, academic journey, and really learning some of the practical principles, if you will, that they'll need to be successful in business. And most of the students that I teach there are on an entrepreneur track. Many of them, matter of fact, a number of them are athletes. I have a number of football, basketball, track players, male and female, in my courses. And they have some of the most interesting stories after their playing careers. They'd like to, become more agents and, be involved in sports merchandising and things of that nature. So it's really interesting to see that. And on the other end, with Cornell, most of the students are older students. Most of them are in their career path, and they're looking to get certifications in certain verticals. And in my particular vertical that I focus on, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So a number of them are trying to understand how to change and make communities more equitable, whether it be on their job or whether it be in a nonprofit role or just changing some of the dynamics in their city. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Professor Anderson. It's two different distinct types of students. And of course, each institution is very different in terms of the types of students that they actually have enrolled in the programs.
You just mentioned a challenging word, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're going to get down to that at another question, but I know that DEI principle is a challenging statement and a challenging principle at this point. Can you kind of share information about your work in social advocacy for communities of color?
That's a great question. And I do quite a bit of things right now currently through my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. We have, matter of fact, I just got off a call for our Omega Gents program, which is our mentoring program where we mentor young Black and brown boys, middle school, high school, and we help them with also scholarship opportunities. So that's one of the things. And also I'm the senior chaplain in my chapter. So we do quite a bit of community outreach in the West Oakland community with the homeless population, going out and providing some services for that particular at-risk population. So those are some of the key things that I'm focused on currently. But throughout my career, I've done quite a bit of advocacy in communities, disadvantaged or compromised in some way communities experiencing inequities. And those are the things that I'm doing currently, if that makes sense.
Now, are you part of an actual congregation at this point, or and if so, does the congregation sort of intertwine with some of your ideas in some of your community work, if I may?
We just moved from the Albany area, which is right next to Berkeley, and we moved out to the Fairfield community. So we are part of a church here in the community, which has a lot of community work that they're doing here in the Fairfield, Suisun City area. I haven't personally been able to get really involved and engaged in that as of yet, because of the things that I'm doing right now, which is keeping me pretty busy. But yeah, I plan to be involved with some of the things that they do here locally, but primarily because of my fraternity affiliation. Most of the advocacy work I do is in the Oakland area.
And may I ask, what's the name of the faith community?
It's Mount Calvary. I'm sorry, Mount Calvary Baptist Church. They have two campuses here. Yeah, one is in Fairfield and one is in Suisun City.
Yeah, that's a pretty large congregation.
Yes,
a very large congregation.
Yes, it is.
How was some of your advocacy work? How was it supported? The concept and principle of higher education.
Well, for instance, the mentoring program. Of course, you know that there's so many kids in the Oakland school system that are at risk, and for a number of different reasons. We know there's, poverty issues that they're dealing with. There's, single parent household issues that they're dealing with. There are mental health issues that a number of these kids are dealing with. So the thing that we do is we provide not only mentoring, we provide tutoring. We take these kids on trips down south to HBCUs. We take them to colleges, universities here in California on the West Coast as well. So we're exposing them as much as we can to educational concepts and how to use education as a bridge to change their circumstance.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We need more individuals who are corporate leaders, academic leaders, and faith-based leaders, ministers and clergy, what have you, to do more of that and to advocate more of that. Who influenced you, if I may ask, Dr. Oten, to become an academic leader, professor, manager, what have you? Is there a particular person, your family, or who influenced you to really want to work in the world of academia?
That's an interesting question, and it starts with me as a kid. I want to say I was in first grade. I believe I was in first grade, and our teacher, one of my teachers, asked the class, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And of course, I raised my hand and I said, "I'm going to be a doctor." And of course, at that time, the only doctor that I knew of was a medical doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, so, even as I grew up, I said, you know what, I would like to be able to become a doctor. Initially, when I went to LSU, I wanted to become a dentist. I wanted to study dentistry. Took one of those courses initially, and I was like, no, this is not it. But I did know that I wanted to teach, even at a very young age. I was always a leader, on the sports teams I played on. I was a captain of my basketball team, baseball team, football team. So I was always a leader, always, teaching. Worked at Boys and Girls Club for a number of years as an area director, establishing clubs in at-risk communities to expose boys and girls in those communities to opportunities to experience something outside of what they see each and every day. And while I was at LSU, I also did some volunteer teaching at an elementary school, which was a part of my coursework there. And after my coursework was done, I decided I wanted to continue to do that. So I actually volunteered at this particular school in East Baton Rouge Parish for about 2 years. So I knew I always wanted to teach. Of course, like I told you, I became a pastor. So I was teaching all the time, teaching, several times during the week, traveling around the country, teaching, doing mission work. So I knew I always wanted to teach, and that inspired me to go back and go ahead and get my doctorate. and start this journey in academics. But my maternal grandmother, was a great inspiration to me. She always pushed me to be the best I could be. She really pushed me away from trouble in the community in which I grew up in. So yeah, she played a big role in that, because I told her that I wanted to be a doctor as a kid. She said, hey, you can do anything and be anything you want to be. And she vowed to help me in any way that she could.
Sound like you had a good upbringing. I'm always working as a musician, and having worked in so many different venues and capacity, and being very connected to the church all of my life and higher education. I've always told myself, I always commend anyone who worked as a pastor or wanted to be a pastor, because I always tell people, no way would I want to do that.
I feel you.
Because I mean, to be a pastor to me is to be a good one, it has to be a divine calling, because to me, I have enough headache just working as a director of music and to take on a role to be somebody's pastor where people are calling you 24 hours a day and complaining all the time and never satisfied. No, thank you. So I commend you, but you know what? I could tell in your voice that you are very astute in terms of speaking to faith congregations, because you sound like a pastor. That's great. You know, they got a whole bunch of churches right now that's looking for them. So I got to recommend you to them.
So look, Professor, I did it for a large part of my adult life. You know, I was a youth pastor for a while. Of course, an associate pastor, assistant pastor for a while, and I was a senior pastor for 15 years. Wow. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. In New Orleans, our church was in Gentilly, in the 8th Ward community in New Orleans, if you're familiar with the city at all. And we were just finishing up a renovation on a 10,000 square foot property that we had purchased. Put a lot of money, sweat, equity into getting it up and running. And we were going to celebrate our 10th year celebration, October 2005. We were going to have Robin Gould, who was a good friend of mine, pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina, pastors a big international church. He was going to come down. His choir was coming down to celebrate with us. And end of August 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit and destroyed all of the church properties that we had, the school, the sanctuary, the community center, everything. And that was a pivotal moment, a moment that I had to pivot in my life.
Wow.
Yes.
I recall that was such a tragedy for so many people of color.
Yes. But it created a lot of opportunities. It created a lot of opportunities for the people in my particular church. We had a number of people, their kids were going to, pretty bad, deplorable schools. They didn't have great housing, and they, evacuated to several places around the country. And in these communities, a number of these communities embraced them, helped them get jobs, helped them get good quality housing, put their kids in good schools. Some of them, the community came together and put their kids in private schools. And I had to travel around the country to all of these pockets where they were and encourage them to stay. God had opened a door, an opportunity for them to get better housing, get better jobs, put their kids in better schools. So it actually presented a great opportunity for a lot of people, and maybe that's a story that's not told enough.
And I think that what a wonderful way that you have sort of re-supported that principle of when you have lemons, make lemonade.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Doctor. Tell me, as a noted research scholar and faith leader, for a large part of your life, what are some of your most significant accomplishments in the secular venue, corporate venue, as well as in the faith community?
I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm really proud of is organization I was working with, you may even be familiar with them. It was Black Collegian Magazine. Started in 1970. It was the first publication of its kind to help African American students matriculate through college, get internships, and eventually find jobs. And we launched the first diversity job board. And I was the first employee that they brought on to really help spearhead launching this diversity job board. And it grew and caused the company, because the company, when I got there, we had about 15 employees. And within the first couple of years, we got up to maybe 100 employees, 120 employees. And we employed people of color all over the country in this endeavor. And that's one of the proudest moments in my career, helping to impact diverse people of color who were looking for opportunities with corporations or institutions of higher learning, nonprofits all around the country. So we really made an impact and really opened doors, or helped to open doors for people of color to find these types of opportunities all over the country. That's one of the great things. And when it comes to ministry, one of the things that I'm most proud of as well is the fact that we were able to build a ministry, build a church, establish a school in the New Orleans community, and change lives throughout the community, as well as the great mission work that we were able to do around the country, around the world, actually. You know, we had missionaries throughout Africa. I can remember us helping a missionary that we helped send to Russia, buy a home for he and his family. We established orphanages and schools and churches in India, as well as South America and several places throughout Africa. So those are some of the crowning achievements, if you will. I still have some close relationships with those missionaries that we supported, a number of pastors around the country that we supported during that time, and even still support to this day. So those are some of the accomplishments that I think about from that question you asked.
And thank you for sharing that. Those accomplishments are very well noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a professional man, and as a man of color, what are some of the challenges that you faced throughout your life in terms of your career, and in terms of some of the challenges that men of color face now with obtaining all of the high degrees and still trying to locate credible places to become employed and to exercise their skills? Kind of share your journey. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
I'll tell you, I'm from the South, so I had to deal with people believe that Jim Crow South, the atmosphere around that has ended. It did not, and it has not. I experienced a lot of that as a kid growing up. And I can remember a job interview that I went on. I had a superior in the Air Force recommended me for a job in Atlanta. And I interviewed over the phone, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we want you here." I had moved to Atlanta, and I went in to go and meet the two hiring managers who hired me, who made the offer over the phone. And the superior who recommended me for the job, he was a white man, very well known in the New Orleans area, had a great reputation. So these gentlemen, they said, "You know what, if you recommend him, we want this guy on our team." Well, when I went there, the first day I was supposed to start, the two gentlemen came out, two white gentlemen, and they saw that I was a black man. And the whole discussion changed. They were like, "Hey, look, go home. We're going to give you a call back." And when they called me back, they wanted to put me in, I think, the mail room or something like that. And I was like, nah, no, thank you. That's not what we talked about. I'm not interested in that. That was very early on. I was a very young man at the time when that happened. And now today, looking to really establish myself in an institution of higher learning. It's so based on relationships. That's what I'm experiencing here in California and other places as well, not just here. And not having necessarily those types of relationships, it's been a real tough go. It's been tough sledding. And that's why I'm thankful that, you came into my life and you can really coach me and mentor me in this process. And I'm really thankful for that.
And I am more than honored. I've been very fortunate to, it's been a challenging journey for me as a professional myself. The California Community Colleges specifically is a very wonderful place of employment, but it's a very complicated institution politically. And there are a lot of barriers, especially for men of color and family men of color, I'll leave it at that, that people don't really discuss, but it does impact many times the employment opportunities. For instance, if you were to work primarily at, you'd say, a University of California, Berkeley, when you go to your typical interview, you're not going to have the diversity of committee members. Everybody on the panel are going to have PhDs. So there's an equality, there's an assumed equality in terms of information. But in the California community colleges, you may have a person who's teaching in CTE with a bachelor's degree sitting next to a person with a doctorate degree in biology or chemistry, sitting next to a classified worker, sitting next to a high school student, and everybody sitting next to a manager. And everybody is given this sort of euphoric idea that everyone are equal educators, where the reality is just that being an educator is more than just sitting on a committee and having the ability to do research and understand how to create outcomes from teaching students and creating programs is more than just sitting on a committee. Somehow, I think in the human development of the California community colleges, from my stance, there are still areas that common sense should be used more effectively. But unfortunately, those are still in the developmental stages. And so I can say that having worked in all three systems, I love the community college, but having worked as a lecture professor for 20 years at UC Berkeley and for 10 years for the California State University, where I started many, many years ago, you know what? I understand that it's the California Higher Master Plan that involves all three segments. It's very unique, but it's very challenging at the same time. So I say that as a support for you, and I wish nothing but human and God blessings to you for your life and your family. And whatever I could do, I'm going to be there to help you. What community work have you accomplished for the improvement of the protected classes with respect to the philosophy of human? Now, I put equality, and the reason I put equality was because in this climate recently, to discuss DEI is very complicated, because originally DEI kind of came out of the overall concept of equality, and it's become such a big issue between the thinking of the Democrats and the thinking of the Republicans. So I would be curious to kind of hear your ideas in terms of some of the things you've been able to accomplish to help the protected class in any of those areas: equality, diversity, equity, inclusion, what have you.
Yeah, I'll tell you one accomplishment that's pretty near and dear to my heart. I was able to establish a community development corporation some years ago back in New Orleans, Louisiana, and it was really focused on housing, education, and feeding and clothing at-risk communities in the New Orleans area. But the DEI part of this discussion that we're getting into now, what really intrigues me the most and what I'm most interested in and the things that I facilitate for Cornell University is really about system thinking, because what we tend to do is we tend to get caught up in what we see and what we hear, but that's the surface part of it. Really, system thinking takes us below the surface, like looking at an iceberg. And when you're on top of the water, you see the tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg is really massive below the surface. And that's really where the behavior of the iceberg takes place in terms of how it shifts, how it cracks, how it breaks, how it moves. And that's the part that I'm most interested in exposing students to and people to, especially people in Black and brown communities, because a lot of times we don't understand how to make change happen, how to create equity. And it starts really with system thinking. You have to think how the system works, how it operates, the behavior, the traits of the system. And that's how you intervene, or there's a place for intervention to make change and create change. So as long as we stay caught up in what we hear and what we see, we won't be able to make a difference. We have to go deeper, get below the surface, and begin to think how the system operates, how it behaves, its traits, behaviors, all of those things, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. It's kind of equates to my analysis of the bachelor's, master's, and PhD program. I always say that a bachelor's gives you a general knowledge of information. The master's help you to concentrate on something specifically, but an effective PhD or an EDD, whatever, should help you to understand the soil that the ground rests on. You know, when you put cement on top of that soil, you should be able to really evaluate, is this the best place to lay cement because of the soil? You're able to evaluate not just the color of the carpet, not just the padding, but you're able to evaluate more effectively if you have good knowledge.
Yes.
You know, what it rests on. So I appreciate that response.
Another thing, Professor Henderson, if I may, another analogy, illustration, we can use is a tree. You know, when we're talking about DEI and changing equity, making things equitable, you know, we basically see the tree above the ground. We see the branches, the leaves, and all of those leaves can represent certain problems. In system thinking, we call it a problem tree. And on the branches and the leaves, we can identify all of these different problems. But the thing that impacts the branches and the leaves are what's below the surface, the roots. You know, how is the soil? How is the water access for the tree? What's the temperature around the tree that impacts all of these problems, all of these leaves and all of these branches? And until we begin to understand and learn what's at the roots, we won't be able to make equitable change, in my opinion.
That's absolutely correct. Dr. Oten, I have just two more questions. It's kind of combined into one.
Sure.
Kind of share with our digital audience, what are some of your community goals, personal goals, family goals regarding employment, and just academic and professional goals?
You know, my goal is really overall, my wife and I want to leave a legacy for my grandchildren. We have 6 kids and 15 grandkids. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, they're all in the South. They're in Houston, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Greenville, South Carolina. But leaving a legacy, I've been thinking about this a lot for my grandchildren. For them to see the value in, you know, working hard, the value of education, the value of building community, the value of family, if you will, and our larger family, because it takes a village, right, to raise a child and to raise awareness, if you will. So those are some of the things that are really important to me. And family. And one of the things that a book that I'm actually publishing right now, it's a strategy development, a new way of thinking for the church. So from what I've learned in my doctoral program is these different aspects of strategy and strategic thinking, strategic foresight. And in a number, you've worked in the church world. Of course, I've worked in the church world a good portion of most of my adult life. And I believe that this can be very impactful for churches as well as for students who are studying to go into ministry, whether that be as a pastor, whether that be in music or any kind of administration, any kind of role in the church, to start really thinking strategically. So that's something that I'm pretty excited about, getting that published and hopefully getting it into in the curriculum of schools around the country, around the world, if you will. And my goal, if you will, is I want to work in an institution of higher learning and help impact students, specifically, students of color, and help them to see that their goals are attainable, it's tangible, it's real. Because you're looking at, a man who comes from the South, grew up in the projects, the ghettos of New Orleans, and was able to leave there and do some incredible things in my life and live around the country and travel around the world. So the world is a lot bigger, Professor Henderson, as you well know. I thought the world was very small as a kid growing up, because everything on the news was, black men are killing and robbing and stealing, and that's all I saw on the news. So I thought this country was overran with criminals of color. And when I had a chance to leave New Orleans as a freshman, as a senior, right out of high school, 5 days after I graduated, I joined the Air Force, just wanted to get out, get away. And I was able to see the world in a different lens, a different light. And, we've made some incredible strides and impacts throughout our history in this country and throughout history of the planet, of the world. So, those things are pretty important to me, and some of the things I'm really looking forward to or working on. And one other thing, I still want to go back, believe it or not, I still want to go back and get my JD, get my Juris Doctorate, because I believe my final offering to this life, if you will, is to advocate for those disenfranchised. Our people go to jail for the simplest things, where those who have money, those who have equity, those who have influence, they don't see jail. They don't see jail time. They don't see the other side of the law, because they don't have, or better yet, they have equity, if you will. And so many people don't have equity, don't have vision, can't see the opportunity. So I believe my last contribution, if you will, is to advocate for those who are disenfranchised.
Well, I trust that as you continue to fulfill your goals and dreams, that you are given a long life so that you can really see the fruits of all of your wonderful work. Dr. Oten, do you have any, would you like to share any other thoughts and ideas you would like to communicate?
I think that's it. I would really like to see those who are in leadership in our institutions of higher learning really begin to practice what they preach, in terms of really creating an atmosphere, an environment of equity and inclusion, and creating opportunities. I think we talk about it quite a bit. I'm not exactly sure if we're actually implementing those sorts of things. So I'm going to be interested to really, pick your brains and really, sit at your feet and listen to the coaching that you have, the experience that you had all these years in our institutions. And maybe there's something that we can do collectively to help change the system. And I believe we can. I believe we can change the system.
Well, it has certainly been a delight as the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated to speak with you this
My pleasure.
evening. It has been a joy. You have shared a lot of wonderful principles and ideas, and if no one has ever told you, I'm proud of you as a man of color, because I could tell that you came from a struggle and you've achieved a lot. And I think the sign of a great man is a man who never looks at his achievements, but they continue to look going forward. And that's what you remind me of. God bless you and your family, and we hope to see you soon. God bless you.
Professor, God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much now. Bye-bye now.
Take care.